Okay. The May 15, 2026 Forest Grove School District Budget Committee meeting is called to order at 6:03. Please let's stand for the flag salute. Of the United States. One nation under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. We'll have the roll call for the members present right here. Jennifer Thomas, Susan Field,
One moment. Jennifer's online, we just can't hear you.
Okay, how's that? Can you hear me now?
Melinda Fisher,
Here.
Lisa Franco,
Here.
Kate Kandasky,
Here.
Nicholas Hafez, here, Christy Coden,
Here.
Alma Lozano, she's not here. Jordan Miller, here. Pete Truax, here. And Maya Andre. Maya. Maya is something. No Maya today. All right. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All right. Any opposed? Motion carries. I have a motion to approve the 14th. The 2026 meeting minutes as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, first and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Before we continue tonight's meeting, I would like to acknowledge that we received the resignation of Megan Bear from the Budget Committee alternate position on May 4th, 2026. On behalf of the Budget Committee, I want to thank Megan Bear for her willingness to serve. Due to the timing within the current budget process and the nature of the alternate position, the district will not be filling the alternate vacancy for the 2026-27 budget cycle. Dr. West, it's your turn.
Thank you. We're in the midst of a mic replacement, but in the meantime, this is my teacher voice. So I will project and hopefully that'll be enough for about a minute. Super. Okay, thanks for your patience with that. To the Forest Grove School District Budget Committee, Board of Directors, families, staff, and community. Yes, thank you. Director Kluth just reminded me, if you want to follow along, the budget message is behind the blue tab in your budget book. Thank you for that. I am honored to share with you the proposed budget for the 26-27 school year. This document is intended not only to explain the financial allocations for the coming year, but also to articulate the values, data, and priorities that shape our decision making. At its heart, this budget is built on an unshakable and common belief. Every child matters and deserves a great school where they can learn and grow. This shared belief is more profound and powerful than any fiscal challenge we face. While the numbers in this budget represent a necessary correction to our structural deficit, they also represent a commitment to the stability and long-term health of our district. Public schools have been a powerful equalizer in our nation's history, and they remain the best way to reach and teach our community students. By taking the difficult steps to balance our budget now, we are ensuring that Forest Grove continues to prepare our children for choice-filled futures. Our budget is not a set of isolated numbers. It is a direct reflection of our district's strategic plan. As we navigated the complexity of this year's financial landscape, We return to our 4 core priorities to serve as guardrails for every reduction in investment. Starting with instructional excellence, protecting the instructional core, daily interaction between a teacher, a student, and rigorous content. Student well-being and belonging, ensuring schools are safe, inclusive, and welcoming environments where students feel a sense of security and connection. Family and community engagement, maintaining transparency and listening to the values of our stakeholders. And 4th, organizational resilience, building sustainable fiscal systems that move us out of deficit spending and toward a healthy, long-term financial future. To build a resilient future, we must first be honest about our current economic reality. Like many districts across Oregon, Forest Grove is facing a perfect storm of converging conditions. First, we are managing a decade-long trend of declining enrollment. In Oregon, school funding is primarily determined by student counts, which drive approximately 94% of our general fund revenue. Over the last 10 years, our enrollment has declined by 538 students, the equivalent of an entire elementary school. Enrollment decline is expected to persist for at least 5 more years, leading to a corresponding decrease in revenue. Second, while our student population decreased, our operational costs continue to rise. For example, in school year 24-25, while our revenue increased by 4.6%, our personnel costs grew at a higher rate due to bargain salary increases, step and column movement for experience, rising benefit costs, and public employee retirement services increases. Historically, we filled this gap using one-time savings from our ending fund balance. However, using one-time fixes for recurring costs is not a sustainable strategy. To address this structural deficit, we identified a need to reduce our expenditures by $4.6 million for the 26-27 school year. Combined with the $2 million reduction we made last year, this represents a total of $6.6 million reductions within the biennium. This is the work required to move our district toward a sustainable future where our revenue and our expenses are aligned. This budget recommends a disciplined and conservative approach to fiscal year 27. The need for this approach is reinforced by external factors, particularly federal funding levels in the Oregon legislative session scheduled for 2027. The 2027 session brings significant uncertainty regarding the final funding level for the state school fund, and the allocation amount for our district may not be known until after our budget process is complete next spring. The state school fund has not kept pace with cost increases, and the state continues to project a deficit as a result of federal HR 1 and uncertain corporate and personal income tax revenue. This unknown timing requires us to plan conservatively to ensure the stability of our operations. Additionally, while our budget forecast includes provisions for inflation increases, the past year has seen tariff pass-through rates, insurance costs, and energy rates increase beyond assumptions. These converging uncertainties further reinforce the critical need to maintain adequate savings and reserves as a buffer against future economic unpredictability. Our approach to these reductions has been disciplined and careful. We first looked at everything else, reviewing service contracts, material goods, operational efficiencies, before turning to personnel. However, since over 80% of our budget is dedicated to the people who serve our students, a reduction in force was unavoidable. The board of directors authorized a reduction of up to 51 full-time equivalent positions, 27 licensed FTE, 21 classified FTE, 2 administrator FTE, and 1 confidential FTE. Our district leadership team worked diligently to minimize actual layoffs through vacancy placements, transfers, and early retirement incentives for our educators. We know that behind these numbers are colleagues and friends who make our schools what they are, and we did not undertake a reduction in force lightly. While a reduction of this size will touch nearly every aspect of our organization, we first funded those areas our students, families, and staff identified as important to the student experience. This includes safety and security, electives, and extracurricular activities, and minimizes impacts to class size. Despite the necessary reductions, this budget remains an investment in high-quality instruction and in our students. We are centering our resources on high-quality instruction and the retention of our most veteran staff. Our recent benchmark data reinforces that our focus is in the right place. We are seeing significant growth in third grade literacy, where we have invested in curriculum and professional learning focused on the science of reading. For example, students in classrooms with letters trained teachers, Letters is a science of learning, professional learning program, showed a 22% higher proficiency rate than those in non-trained settings. We are early in our effort to ensure all educators are trained in the science of reading, but these results are encouraging. This budget maintains our investment, ensuring our educators have the evidence-based tools they need to close foundational gaps. Furthermore, we are prioritizing dual language programming, expanding and protecting opportunities for dual language learning as an evidence-based instructional practice that honors our community, including the majority of students and families who are Latina or Latino, and many who are Spanish speakers, while also promoting essential workplace skills. Advanced coursework and electives, ensuring that students have access to rigorous courses and high engagement electives like mariachi and beginning band, CTE, and AP offerings. Athletics and extracurricular activities, supporting students in developing and demonstrating skills outside the classroom through activities that connect them with like-minded peers and shared experiences. Safety and belonging. We are committed to maintaining student access to counselors and mental health professionals. We will also continue to refine the implementation of our foundational instructional tools, such as STOIC, PACS, and CHAMPS, to ensure that our classrooms are predictable, safe environments where effective learning can take place. Fulfilling our promise. We remain committed to fulfilling our bond promises and completing the modernization of our human resources and fiscal systems to ensure operational efficiency. I recognize that this budget brings a sense of weight and uncertainty. In periods of change, the constancy of school matters more than ever. Our classrooms remain spaces where hope and stability take root, and where kindness we extend to one another strengthens the care we provide to our students. Fear is contagious, but so is hope. Hope is built in the everyday acts of compassion that connect us, in watching a kindergartner learn to read or a high schooler build and program a robot. By making the difficult fiscal adjustments now, we are protecting these moments for years to come. We will continue to advocate at the state level for funding that reflects the true cost of educating our children. Locally, we will continue to listen, to refine our practices, and to serve every child who walks through our doors with respect and protection, no exception. Thank you for your trust, your partnership, and your unwavering support of the Forest Grove School District. Together, we will navigate this season and emerge as a stronger, more resilient team. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. West. Ms. Ivy Include, it's your time now.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to orient you a little bit to the budget book and the presentation, you'll notice at the bottom left of the presentation in your slides is a page number. Most everything that we're gonna go over tonight is a reference to a part of the budget document itself. So if you wanna look more into that, or you wanna follow along or need more information, there's page numbers and references as part of that. So you are more than welcome to flip back and forth. Just a quick reminder of where we are with the budget process. This is the budget calendar for this year. Tonight is the night that you received the proposed budget. Listen to the budget message from Dr. West. And then after tonight, you have 2 additional optional budget committee meetings to continue to discuss and deliberate. Our goal is to be able to adopt a budget on the June 9th school board meeting. Quick overview, a couple of these slides are an overview of what we went over on Budget 101, just to orient you to the roles and responsibilities, again, of the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee tonight will receive and review the budget, consider public comment, discuss and deliberate, and then ultimately adopt a budget for recommendation for, approve a budget for recommendation for the board to adopt. At this point, once we present the budget to you tonight, administration serves in just an advisory capacity. So we are here to help support you, answer questions, provide additional information, but it is now going to be in your hands. Quick reminder of what the budget committee doesn't do. At the budget committee, we don't talk about individual staff members. We don't place individual staff members. We don't set salaries and benefit levels. Or add or delete programs. And then we don't develop policies. The policies is really the board's role. Quick reminder of what we are hoping to get out of the end of this is to set maximum appropriations for the district spending for the fiscal year 26-27. And this is maximum appropriations by major fund and major function. A general fund instruction, general fund support services, grants instruction, grants support services. This is also on page 164. It is your red tab in your book. And that is the draft of the motions for this committee as if you were to approve the proposed budget. And then if there's any changes, we'll change and adjust this. Options after tonight, you can, or after you receive the budget, you can approve the budget as it's proposed. You can increase appropriations if you believe we don't have enough resources built into this budget. You can decrease appropriations if you think we are expending too much resources, or you can move appropriations between major functions. That would look like moving resources between instruction and support services, or support services to instruction, between those major function levels. Right? Now to dive into the budget itself, the green tab is where it starts with budget at a
Let's
glance.
move to the comment.
Question, thank you for all that information. Once the budget gets adopted by the school board, we can make, as a school board, we can make changes in that adopted budget depending on the vagaries of what happens in the outside world. What's the percentage of the change that we can do on that?
25%. And we've done that. We did it earlier this year where we came to the board and asked for an increase in appropriations to do the PERS side account.
So we're not increasing the total budget, but we're shifting after the budget's been adopted because of the necessities by
Unknown circumstances.
outside influences.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we've done that. We do 1 or 2 resolutions every year. There's times where it'll be August and we'll get notice that we all of a sudden got a new grant. And so now we need to increase appropriations to be able to expend that new grant. We only need the approval really to increase appropriations or transfer appropriations by function. But administration always has the role to not spend as much and to decrease appropriations where necessary, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No, seeing none, go ahead.
Thank you. So page 23 in the book starts budget at a glance, and 23 through 39 is really where the meat of the budget is. This is where it goes through everything from our revenue to our expenditures. It talks more about labor costs that are built into the budget, FTE, enrollment, FERS costs, and it goes through a lot of information, more detail. It's more than what the legal requirement is. The rest of the document after that, that's the legal requirement for our reports and how we present the data. But we try to give you a budget at a glance that gives you some more information on that. And tonight we'll go through that information. We'll summarize a lot of that information and go through those pages tonight.
And I'll take over for the next couple of slides here. Again, down in the bottom lower left-hand corner, you see this slide is on page 23 if you want to follow along. As I said in my message, we started with identifying what are those things we're going to fund. Those of you who have been along in this journey since about January know that we held several engagement sessions. We conducted a survey with our students and our families. And what we heard through those engagements and the surveys, that there are 3 priorities that emerged as the top categories that people were interested in seeing funded. Safety and security was by far the top priority. Our students told us that extracurricular activities and their electives matter a lot. And then we heard from our teachers that they don't want to see astronomical increases in class size. So we used the community input that we received to fund the budget first, to look for those areas where we could preserve as much of the services that we provide to kids, the safety, security, extracurriculars, and appropriate class sizes as we possibly can. And then we looked at all of these other areas. We've got to safeguard the instructional core. That is our business. That's what we're charged with doing. We need our environments to be welcoming. We have to set ourselves up for the future. You've heard us talk quite a bit over these past few months about avoiding one-time savings because they don't actually address our structural deficit. And then preserving our dual language programs is a priority for us, both because of our student and family population, which I referenced in my message, but also because there is decades of research that show us that a strong dual language program is one of the most effective ways for students to develop English language proficiency. And we know in our own internal data that our English learners that are developing for proficiency are being very successful at the high school level. And then, of course, we want to ensure that our students at the high school level have comprehensive course offerings. We do need to meet the minimum state requirements so that students can earn the credits to graduate. But in addition to that, we want their high school experience to be rich and to have options. And then lastly, but that doesn't mean it's least, we also heard that mental health and counseling supports are really important. And so we have preserved those as well. You'll see in our budget as we get further in here, we did make a slight adjustment in our counseling staff due to enrollment declines. But we have preserved the services that students have access to in our schools and their access to mental health professionals. Next slide, please. In addition to these priorities, we also look to our strategic plan. You'll notice quite a bit of overlap. The strategic plan was not developed in isolation. Several years ago, this district, before I started, undertook an extensive community engagement process to develop the strategic plan. Much of what I just referenced, what that was highlighted in our engagement around the budget, was also prioritized through the strategic plan process. So you see a lot of overlap here. From a budgeting perspective, that actually makes it a little bit easier because we don't have conflicting priorities. But what the strategic plan does for us more practically is that underneath these bigger banners of behavioral health and wellness and creating a resilient organization, we start to disaggregate a little. What does that actually look like? We break that apart into some measurable outcomes, and we fund so that we can actually achieve these outcomes. If dual language instruction matters to us, we need to devote some level of funding to ensure that our educators have the professional learning to instruct in that environment well, that they have the resources that they need to teach well. So we have to invest in those areas in order to see the outcomes that we're hoping for in those areas. And our strategic plan guides us through that process. Back to you.
So the other part that is on page 23 is our financial assumptions built into this budget. This budget is built on an $11.4 billion state school fund for the 25-27 biennium. It is split 49% year one and 51% year two. This budget is based on declining enrollment. It has flat funding for the state school fund because the way the state school fund works, we get funded at the greater of the prior year versus the current year. And so since we are in that declining enrollment, we are using last year's enrollment number, this current year's enrollment numbers for our funding level, but we know that enrollment is declining. This budget assumes a 97 student loss compared to this current year. Staffing reductions, it includes 68.8 FTE of reductions as compared to the current year's budget. 51 of those were through our RIF process that we completed in March and April and in May. And I'll go into more detail about those in a little bit. It does include full labor contracts for both our licensed and our classified union groups. We finalized bargaining with both our groups this year, so we don't have estimates for built into this budget like we have in the past. We have known salary and COLA rate increases and health insurance increases in this. We do have the continuation of the 22 bond. We are starting to wind down on all of those projects, but we do have a considerable amount of resources left. This includes that in there. And then lastly, it includes no utilization of our ending fund balance. This is really where we're trying to stabilize that ending fund balance and stop the deficit spending of our one-time resources and savings. Now to get into the numbers, this shows our resources for all of our resources across the entire district for the 26-27 proposed budget. It's about $180 million, and 57% of that is our general fund. Our general fund is our only unrestricted resources. That is how we pay for most day-to-day operations, our utilities, our staffing in the building, our classroom instruction. That is where most of our resources and our expenditures go. The special revenue, the food service, debt service, capital funds, those are all restricted and can only be used for the purpose that we receive those resources. Now, when we take those resources and look at just the new resources and we take out that beginning fund balance, we have about $141 million in new resources. 58% of that is state, 30% local, and then 6% federal. Looking at our expenditures for next year, we have about $164 million worth of expenditures built into this budget. 44% of that goes to instruction and 27% goes to support services. This is increasing as a percentage of the whole as our facilities improvements and our bond expenditures start to decrease. The support services and instruction will start to increase. So as those bond funds start to diminish, this graph will start shifting over time because it does have all resources in it. Now, because our general fund is our unrestricted resources, this is where we have the most control over and deciding how it will be expended. I'll spend a little bit more time on our general fund than I'll spend anywhere else. And when we look at our general fund, this graph was shown in the, or a similar version of it was shown in the last budget committee meeting that we have. And it's showing the 2024-25 actuals, this year's forecast, and then what is in this proposed 26-27 budget. The dark green smaller portion is the beginning fund balance. The light green is the new resources. The dark gray is the expenditures, and then the light gray is our ending fund balance. And our beginning fund balance and resources has to equal our expenditures and our ending fund balance. And so what you see here is the $10.6 million ending fund balance that we have projected for the 25-26 school year, then becomes our beginning fund balance for this budget. And then the other piece is you'll see in this budget, the $10.6 million beginning fund balance is equal to our $10.6 million ending fund balance. Our goal through this budget process was to stabilize our expenditures and to stop depleting our ending fund balance. General fund resources, we have $92.7 million of new resources built into this budget for the general fund. 72% is state, 22% local, and then we have a little bit in transfers and intermediate. When we look at the state school fund, because the state school fund uses a combination of intermediate, local, and state resources. It's our property taxes, our common school fund, our county school fund, timber revenue, and our state school fund. That's all formula resources with the state as part of our distribution formula. And that accounts for 92% of these total resources. It means 92% of our new resources going into next year is solely driven by enrollment.
So Eileen, we're receiving zero amount from the federal government next year?
This is general fund.
Oh, general, fund, okay,
Most of our federal resources are all in grants.
okay.
There's this tiny sliver of transportation reimbursement in there, but it's doesn't even show up on the graph.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have a comment or question from Jen.
Oh,
Hi, Eileen, can you give us a few examples of local revenue sources?
yeah, local revenue sources is going to be our property taxes from our community. It will be interest revenue, student gate fees to go to athletics. It would be reimbursement from the community school for them purchasing transportation services from us. So it's anything locally here in our community. The intermediate is gonna be anything kind of regionally, so our ESD service credits, countywide items. And then state items are gonna be more of our state school fund, our federal forest fees, or our state forest revenue. Our high cost disability adjustment or resources, so that's what's gonna be in that state bucket. Kind of gives you an idea of what's in each category.
Thank you. For the local category, are property tax revenues the bulk of that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And that again is where we can't go above $5 per thousand on, yeah, property taxes.
Okay.
Okay,
The property tax rate for our general fund was set in 1999,
39.
yeah. As a fixed rate, and it's set. Hey, when we look at general fund expenditures, I'm sorry, are we good with revenue? I don't want to rush you. Okay. Moving on to expenditures for the general fund. We're looking at just the general fund alone. We have $92.7 million worth of expenditures built into this proposed budget. 61% is instruction and 38% is support services. And this is pretty in line with what it was last year. Looking at expenditures in a different way, this shows expenditures by major object. So instead of instruction versus support services, this is what type of item are we purchasing? Salaries and benefits account for about 77% of our total budget. And if this is before we include other items like our custodial, our transportation, our substitutes, or grounds. If we were to have all of those in-house instead of contracted services, that 77% would be much greater. Right. Now to move on to staffing and FTE, because staffing is such a large part of our budget. Staffing, we had 725 total FTE built into the 26 budget. This proposed budget has 656 FTE. It's 68, almost 69 FTE. It's FTE means full-time equivalent. And so the difference is the 51 FTE that we did the reduction in force this spring. And then we reduced 17 FTE from budget already back in August and at the start of the school year, just based on positions being unfilled. We had reductions in several of our grants last August that we had to make some adjustments from. A lot of those were just from natural turnover. It wasn't a full reduction. It was just we didn't have the funding to support them, or we weren't able to fill the position at the time. So we never filled it this year. So that's the difference between the prior year's budget and this proposed budget.
And then in terms of the process that we followed, again, we started by looking at what is our community telling us. And when I use the word community, I mean our whole school community. what are our plans, our priorities based on the strategic plan that was developed, and let's make sure that we fund those things first, those things that we heard really matter and that we know really matter to kids. And then from there, we looked at our efficiency measures. So what are the temporary positions that we could eliminate? What are vacancies that were never filled that we realized we don't actually need to continue? And we looked to reduce those first. Vacancies that we felt like are important to our organization, that we know that our kids need to have filled in order to have a successful experience. We held any of those vacancies because we knew these reductions were coming, so that when we got to the point where we were actually working through the process of reduction, we had places to put people. As I've explained, the reduction process is very complex with several different variables that drive who has rights and priority for positions, but in order for them to have any rights or priorities, we have to have spots to come in. And it was through preserving many of those vacancies that we were able to place enough individuals that we didn't have to lay off 51 FTE. In addition, we made some strategic adjustments. We shifted some of our general fund expenses to grants where we had room. We also increased our class size ratio from a 1 to 24 to a 1 to 25, and I'll get into that in just a minute here so you can see how that played out. And then we postponed non-critical professional learning and where we could reduce discretionary budgets. So we looked across the breadth of our budget to identify where can we reduce to minimize the number of actual layoffs that our system experience and minimize the number of staff that we reduced within our budget. Next slide, please. So here's what this looked like. As it played out, I'm gonna focus on just a couple of the numbers up here, and then if you have questions, we're happy to answer those. You'll see up there that in total, 16.6 classroom teachers were part of the reduction in force, not layoffs, but the reduction in force. 12 of those 16.6 are just due to a decline in enrollment. The additional 4.6 were the result of the increase in the 1 to 25 ratio. Another area that I want to highlight, if you look at the classified on the right-hand side, starting with special education instructional assistants and moving down to migrant liaisons, so those 4 different categories of FTE, those reductions were due to flat or decreasing federal funding. We had to make those adjustments because the funds are finite. We can't overspend. Some of these other reductions that you see up here fit with what we heard from our community. So our community said, look to the district office. There's several district office positions up there. We listened to that and we were able to identify some positions that we were able to consolidate or that we feel like we can delegate responsibilities to others within the organization. The counselors I referenced already, as I was speaking earlier. And then there's an assortment of other positions that we included in the 51 FTE reduction. Seeing no questions, we'll move on to FTE over time.
So this chart just shows our FTE over time, looking back at this, proposed budget and then going back several years. If we look at our 2018-19 adopted budget compared to this one, this budget still includes 20 more licensed FTE, 23 additional classified FTE, 1 additional administrative position, 1 additional confidential position. That's a 7% increase since 2018-19. However, if we look at our enrollment over the same period, we're down 9.6% of our enrollment. We're down 582 students, but we're still up on our FTE over the same period of time. So just a little bit of history on our enrollment. Now look at class size averages. Built into this budget includes our target of 1 to 24 to 1 on grades kinder through 4. It does include a 30 to 1 on 5, 6, a 25 to 1 on 7, 8, and a 24 to 1 on 9, 12. Now our secondaries, that is strictly a ratio of number of students to teachers. However, we do know that our teachers have prep time where those students are not with them. So if we weight that for the actual instructional time, it's more like a 29 to 1 and a 32 to 1 on average across the building. We do know that grades 5, 6 is high. It's at 30 to 1. That is one place that we have our radar on and we are looking at. We do have a 1.0 FTE built into this budget as a pocket FTE. So once students arrive in the fall and we can see where everybody lands, this is one place that we're already looking at. And this is 30 to 1 because our SIA is built at flat funding in this budget. And we did remove a 1.0 for Tom McCall out of SIA, just because student investment account grant funding, just because that is the only place we had class size FTE in that budget. And so also grades 9, 12, and 7, 8 for Neil Armstrong, Tuolumne Plains, and Forest Grove High School, those look lower than what they are because they have high school success grant resources. And those grant resources that allow us to purchase staffing from cannot go down to grades 5 and 6. So that brings their average class sizes down. So we have a couple of things that are at play here.
And before we move on, a pocket FTE is reserve FTE. So we have budgeted additional FTE that we have not actually allocated to the school. Because we know that every year there's something, there's a bubble, there's kids that show up that we weren't expecting. So we plan for that by reserving a little bit of FTE, so we have some flexibility.
Good question in here.
Typically in the fall, there may be no such thing as a typical fall, but what is the variance usually between projected enrollment for what we think for projected enrollment for what we think next year, and then what actually happens in the fall? Is there typically a variance that we plan for that, or does that look like?
We budget pretty conservatively on our enrollment and staff conservatively. So the last several years, we have budgeted for more students and allocated more staff than what enrollment has actually come in at. And this last year, we've seen that really at the kinder level because that's the hardest place to budget. We don't have any data other than birth rates from 5 years ago to tell us how many kinders are going to come in and then at which school are they going to come in at. So kinders is definitely the hardest to estimate. The rest are pretty easy because we can assume a 3rd grade class at Joseph Gale is going to move into a 4th grade class. Then we can look at historical trends on move-ins and outs and what it looks like from going from Joseph Gale to Tom McCall and what our capture ratios are there. So it's really that kinder that's the hardest place.
Thank you.
A quick question, Eileen. Can you just tell me what the student investment account funds are?
Yeah, the student investment account funds is a state grant that we receive. It was part of
Student Success Act, as part of the Student Success Act, which was a law enacted in 2018, 2019. Gosh, it's been a while. But it's one of the subsets of that piece of legislation. SIA was built within the Student Success, the corporate activity tax. If you're familiar with that, the corporate activity tax funds the SIA and funds some other grants as well. That's where the resources come from. And so the SIA is a more flexible state grant than say a federal grant that we receive, which is very narrow, but it is more restricted than the state school fund. Somewhere in between those two.
Thank you.
And we utilize ours for counseling. We have 8 FTE for counselors built into the SAA grant, and that's what helps get us down to that 250-to-1 ratio. So that's a big bulk of how we utilize SIA is through counseling, and then we have a mental health specialist, I believe, in there. Health IAs are in there. So there's quite a bit in there. Okay. All right, now to move on from this budget to really looking at our future outlook, and with this proposed budget, what it looks like for not only the 26-27 year, but if we were to project it out for 2 additional years. This is a planning tool and a planning model that we use internally. It has high-level assumptions on what if. So if we take this proposed budget and we add 4% worth of property tax increases, if we assume the state school fund is going to come in at $12.26 billion for the 27-29 school year, we can build in negotiated contract rates in there. This has in it an increase in PERS rates because we know our PERS rates are going to increase in the next biennium. Our rate credit is going to sunset in this next biennium, and so that will have a significant impact to our labor costs going into the 27 school year or 27-28 school year. And we do have continued declining enrollment, so this does project continued declining enrollment. This does not, however, have any adjustments built into it to reduce staffing associated to the declining enrollment. So this is assuming we maintain current staffing levels and our current expenditures. But what that does is it takes this year's 10.6 for the 26-27 proposed budget, $10.6 million ending fund balance, and it brings it to just over 1% for the 27-28 school year. And then it brings it well below negative the following year. So even with us maintaining the 11% ending fund balance for this proposed budget, we still do have structural changes that we will have to make in the future years, just because of increasing costs, increasing PERS rates, and declining enrollment.
Before you move on, I think if you look at the column that starts at 728, you can really see that illustrated there, where the beginning fund balance is 10.6 million. You can see the resources decrease over the proposed budget that we have in front of you right now, because we estimate that enrollment will continue to decline. Expenditures will continue to increase. That is one thing we can be absolutely certain of. And the interplay of all that means that our ending fund balance decreases quite a bit if we make no additional structural changes. Play that out over just a couple of years and you get the graph that Director Clute was just about to change to.
And again, this is a planning tool. It is very broad assumptions built into this, and it will change tomorrow. But it is something that we use internally so that we can look long-term beyond just this year.
Thank you. Question for Dr. West, and I think it's primarily another what if question. This is by no means unique to Forest Grove, is it?
No.
This is a carbon copy across the state.
Correct. I won't say all, because I can't say that definitively, but there are many school districts across the state needing to make structural changes like ours. If you pay attention to the news, you probably have been reading about it. One of the most public, of course, has been Portland Public Schools and what they're facing for the upcoming budget cycle. The way we stay in front of it is through the structural change that we're addressing in this budget, and then these types of near daily adjustments to what we know about the real conditions in front of us. So having a tool where we can take the estimates that are updated on a regular basis by the Department of Education, look at our actual expenditures, are we actually spending on a per month basis? Being able to compare those two so we know what our actual cash flow is and make adjustments on the fly. That is how we stay in front of this. Director Kloot's gonna talk in just a couple minutes here about how part of what we do that we bake into this is an assumption that we'll be able to realize some savings every year within the budget, because we know there'll be a position we don't fill right away. And that's some vacancy savings that we can realize. So we, throughout the course of the school year, we account for that as our expenditures are down so that we can make real-time adjustments. So to your point, having a finance officer who understands the ebb and flow of how revenue and expenditures work in our state and in our Department of Education makes a huge difference in keeping us in front of what could be a disaster like we've seen in some districts where they're making mid-year layoffs and furlough days and some pretty significant reactions to the situation that they are in. We are not there, but we're not there because we're making these structural adjustments now.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay.
So this tool, is this a tool that most district CFOs are utilizing? Is it a consistent tool? And when OASBO is advocating to the state about this, are they showing this type of thing, or what is happening with that next level of work? Or is every district really utilizing different types of tools right now?
I think most are using different types of things. This is just a workbook that I have built over time, and we keep adjusting and working through, and if we just keep this live document constantly going with historical data and upcoming projections, and we can adjust the assumptions, and so it's an internal workbook.
Okay, thank you.
And to add on to this question here, how much the community knows about that 27, 28, 28, 29?
I have shared the same information the last 3 years in this meeting, so I don't know if it goes out beyond this. It's something that we talk about at the budget committee. We talk about it internally, but I'm not sure how much.
I don't know how to answer that question either, because I don't know I'll use the word penetration of the message. I don't know how to measure that to see what the reach actually is. We have been talking about it. If you have ideas.
So like we talked last year about this year, we had a few $1 million, but now it looks like it's going to be worse and worse for the next couple of years.
The same period last year, we were assuming the next year we were gonna be down to 1% and have to make minor adjustments. So this is a similar message that we gave the same time last year at the budget meeting. We also gave this, not the exact slide, but the same format. We talked about it in union negotiations with our licensed and classified groups. So it's something that we do use and talk with our members with.
The reason why I asked this question was at a couple of the meetings we had in here, some people said, oh, we did not know anything about it. And that's why I'm asking.
Very possible. I also know from years of teaching and speaking in public spaces that you can't over communicate. We could deliver the same message multiple times in the same forum, and sometimes it takes the third or fourth or fifth time before it clicks for somebody who's listening to the message. So there's some of that. There's also, I think, to your point, we aren't in every space talking to every person. So sometimes this information is new to individuals. So it's a fair question. We are always looking for ways that we can get in front of more people and share this information. What I hope that the budget committee takes away from this is not that we have an impending crisis in front of us, but that we are, like many school districts, as Director Truax points out, we are at a point where we have to reckon with the structural deficits that we've been living with in this school district. Those structural deficits will continue for an undetermined period of time until our enrollment stabilizes and starts to climb again, or until the state identifies a different way to fund schools. That's a possibility too. But regardless, we're in a situation right now where we know, given our enrollment projections and the increases in expenses that we can anticipate, that for the next several years, we are going to have to reckon with adjustments to keep us solvent. And one of the ways that we'll do that, Director Clute will talk about this at some point again before we're done here, I believe, is that we maintain an ending fund balance that can weather surprises. That allows us to do what this graph here is depicting, so that we can ride out into the next year, especially if we can realize some savings throughout the year. And I'll let Director Clute explain what that looks like, because while we're in a situation where we need to be careful and we need to be intentional, we're not in a crisis situation.
So this slide really shows the same information that was on the last slide, just more in a visual. The black first 4 dots, that's the historical enrollment or historical ending fund balance as a percentage of revenue. And so the last 3 years, we were at 21%, 21%, 17%. This is the 11.9% ending fund balance that we project this current year. And then the green that goes down first, that's the proposed budget that is in front of you tonight, and then the future 2 years out. The dotted line is the board policy for ending fund balance at 8% that goes across the middle. And then that gray line that kind of goes up higher, that's if we keep and continue to budget conservatively every year and generate savings through that, whether it's vacancy savings or monitoring our resources and expenditures during the year. If we budget for something and we don't need it during the year, we hold those resources to then be reallocated during the next budget cycle. So that budgeting conservatively every year can help us push out that cliff a little bit. And it allows us more time to be able to continue to adapt. And then the last slide I have for you tonight is just the things that are on our radar. There's a lot on here, but I'll hit a couple of the big items. We do have the 2027-29 long session that's going to be coming up next winter. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to be watching through that, including what the state school fund allocation is going to be, and then any other unfunded mandates or any other items that are going to be coming. We know that every long session comes challenges. And so we don't have that this year, and we're not sitting in that place this year. However, we will be in that place for the upcoming year. We do have instability for the federal funding. We are learning that flat funding for most federal grants, and then we do have risk for some grants, primarily the migrant grants for the next school year, not in this budget necessarily. And then the other federal funding piece that we have that will impact us is the Medicaid and SNAP changes as part of the big beautiful bill. They're reducing the amount of people that would qualify for Medicaid and SNAP will impact our ability to qualify for CEP district-wide. CEP is the Community Eligibility Program that allows us to offer free and reduced free meals, breakfast and lunch for all students across the district. With those changes, we could lose our funding for free meals for all. We do have guaranteed one more year, which is this budget cycle that's in front of you, that we have CEP, and we are looking right now at recertifying and trying to recertify based on today's data to lock us in for 4 more years. So that's our goal before June 30th, is to lock us in for CEP for the next 4 years before we start to see any impact or potential impacts from that. But we do know that that is a risk for us in the future. PERS rate increases, our rate credit from our bond that we have is going to sunset in the 27 school year. And that is going to increase our costs of labor by another 5.4%. Some of this will be offset by the expiration of our debt associated to that. However, we are still expecting 3-4% increase in our costs for labor associated because of the PERS. We don't know what those final rates are yet, and we won't know until next winter. But we will need to budget those and build that into the upcoming budget the following year. And then the last thing that I have here is the fiscal transparency, Senate Bill 141. Part of that is restructuring our entire PBAM and chart of accounts. And that is our accounting manual that is required by all districts in the state. That is going to be a huge overhaul, not only for our business office, but for all of our buildings, our budget document. Everything is going to change drastically. So we don't have to necessarily do that this upcoming year, but it will be mandated the following year. We do have that change that is in front of us, and will impact our budgeting.
Jennifer has a question.
Yes.
Hi, Eileen. Back to the CEP funding, can you give me a kind of a rough estimate dollar-wise of what it costs for us to be able to provide the free meals to all students?
I don't have the total cost if we were to pay, our federal revenue for our nutrition services fund is $3.8 million.
What page are you on?
I am on page 122. We will still get some reimbursement for meals, but I think the biggest risk is our families are used to not having to pay for meals. And we can no longer require students we can't withhold meals. And so what we were experiencing before we went 100% free across the district is we had a significant bad debt. We were writing off $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 every year of unpaid meals. And so if we were to go back to free, or if we were to go back to paid, I see that 50,000 increasing significantly because we will have most likely less families that are going to pay after being free for so long. And then if we were to fully 100% fund that across from district general fund, then those resources would need to come from somewhere else.
So if the district wanted to continue with the free plan, even though, let's say, we lose federal funding to do that, would it be allowable to find community resources that are willing to contribute to those funds so that we can continue that program?
Yes.
Because I suspect that's a pretty easy sell. If you say, we need to raise $5 million so that our kids can continue to have free food, that's a very specific kind of thing that I'd like to think our community members could respond to.
And I'm sure it would be less than the 5 million. I'd have to run the numbers to find out like what we would get reimbursement from the state, what we would actually get reimbursement from the federal government, and where that gap would be if we didn't qualify and if we didn't charge. So we would have to run that.
Okay, thank you.
This conversation is a good example of why careful and conservative budgeting matters. These are considerations that could have substantial implications for our students if they come to pass.
And there's a lot of unknowns built into this that it would be irresponsible to not at least consider in our budgeting process. And then specific to CEP and providing free meals for students, there's certainly a financial cost associated with that. And if that were to come to pass, we would have to wrestle with, do we as a district continue to provide free meals regardless of reimbursement? And one of the factors in that equation, which isn't listed up here, is that we know when kids don't eat, they're not learning as well. And so all of this is interconnected in ways that are sometimes not talked about and brought to light, but they're considerations that we have to weigh as we are evaluating if these factors come to pass, what is the right decision for our students?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things. One, the cost of public budgeting and accounting manual, the PBAM. That's Senate Bill 141. Is there any money attached to that? So it would be what somebody might call an unfunded mandate.
Correct.
Okay, no mind about it, all right. Maybe that's a message we send to the legislature at the beginning of the long session. Say, hey, help us out. Maybe, just maybe. The other thing that I wanna complain about or comment on is the Medicaid and SNAP changes. Now, I think it's House Bill 1, which everybody likes to call a big beautiful bill. That's a terrible name for it. But there is also a threat now by the feds to withhold Medicaid and SNAP money from states if they don't aggressively go after fraud. And I think in the past, we've seen fraud in Medicaid and in SNAP not overly significant. It's not huge like some sponsors of the big beautiful bill say that it's happening. So if we don't have a self-fulfilling prophecy there, we don't send in information that supports the wild-eyed suppositions of some of these people, they could threaten to, again, remove federal funding from those programs, and that would, to use another popular phrase, trickle down to school districts and other districts and other special districts across the state. Neither one of those things are good news, but I think the fixable thing on the PBAM is that the legislature can look to itself and say, we created this mandate, we need to help pay for it. I'll shut up.
Just hand this right over here because the letter that you spoke about, Director Truax, was developed by Director Clute over there and shared with the help of, I think, many different people from the hospital. I'll have you talk about it, but it was vetted. We will send it out again to this committee just so you can see the kind of advocacy that's been put right in front of Board of Ed. Becky Timchuk spoke about it at the Board of Ed meeting, and once again, they just passed it right by, and they today, in fact, are having a next steps with chart of accounts. So your hopes that the legislature will hear that and do something different, that ship has sailed, and the train has left the station. So again, it's what I was saying in the meeting before. I don't know what advocacy it takes, but it's gonna take more than just a few people with a letter. It's gonna take a whole bunch of people saying, we're in this budget meeting and we're hearing this, and why are we still doing these things? So that's just the PBAM. I think the danger when we talk about things like the free and reduced lunch is it's a difficult, we have to have a holistic conversation with our legislators, have to see, and I appreciate the presence of Nicole here from Senator Solomon's campaign here tonight, because I think to see it in real time, what's happening, to be able to, what you have is that you have some people that advocate separately and say, we need this money for the free lunch program. And then all the legislators are like, oh, we have a free lunch program. And they've once again, we aren't looking at why do we even have to be to the point where we're having the discussion about we need the money for the free lunch. But it's that, or right now it's high cost disability. So all the legislation, so some are forming a work group around high cost disability. But the question needs to be, why are we having to do all of these plugging the holes? And I don't know where we elevate that level of conversation while you're still advocating for kids at the local level. And then there's these things that nobody's gonna know what the PBAM is. Who would know what the PBAM is? But I know, you know what but I mean, people, to your point, Nicholas, like people in the community, how do we explain all this to people so that we can, and I think it starts with just having our legislators having a deep understanding locally of what we're doing here. They do hear in the news what's going on everywhere, and so I think that's what's breaking through, and we need to continue to find a way to say, but here we aren't in a crisis. Here we are planning conservatively, and this is why. Here we value these things. So it's an ongoing challenge.
I need to gently,
But I do talk a little bit more about.
I do want to gently remind Chair Kotke that Nicole is on Senator Solomon's staff, not on her campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll shut up for now.
Eileen, do you have an estimate of what this is gonna cost, the PBAN, and are you gonna have to hire additional staff to help you to? Yes. So do you have an estimate or no?
I think I did an estimate at one point, and I put it in one of the letters. We have sent several letters. We have sent community letters, done it as a OASBO group as a whole. There has been a lot of advocacy around that. It's not being heard. For sure. We do know we will have to incur costs with our software companies. We have several of our softwares, including our subservices and our time and attendance, that include the account code structures. We're gonna have to revamp our Infinite Vision software, our accounting software. And we will probably have to have a full-time person for an additional year to help us navigate this change, just because the entire structure is gonna change. We'll probably have to run parallels or try to figure out how to navigate that to make sure that everything's going in right. We'll have to rebuild all of our reporting software. There's gonna be a lot behind that.
Yeah.
And most importantly, and I think what people don't understand is it's not just the business office. It's all of our our secretaries in our buildings. I mean, having them understand our chart of accounts right now versus it going to 27 digits is significant. And so all of our administrators and our admin support, they're gonna have to be retrained, and then just the compliance afterwards to make sure it's all, we all have it in our minds. It's like learning somebody said it it's like learning a new language. It's like me trying to learn French tomorrow and having our, admin specialist trying to learn French tomorrow. It is like learning a whole new language, having to learn a whole new account code structure. So it's gonna be pretty significant. The training for our staff is gonna be essential.
We'll have to rewrite all of our documentation, and these are some of the costs that as soon as this legislation hit the internet, we knew. Just by looking at it, we understood what the costs were because we lived this work. And our legislators don't. So to your point, when a piece of legislation is introduced, it really would be helpful to have some conversations and learn about what are the actual costs to a school district for a piece of legislation. And it's difficult for us to estimate what the actual cost is when the chart of accounts and the PBAM switch over. But the part about this that I think is important to take away because we are talking about budgeting and we are proposing a budget for the upcoming school year is that when something like the chart of accounts and PBAM update comes into play, where we are mandated to make this move, we will have to make a decision between a new accountant versus some other position that we could be funding. And that is a really difficult conversation to have with people about why we can't have another teacher and why we need to have another accountant.
And the other piece about thinking just beyond Forest Grove School District, one of the other changes with this is our community school. Our community school right now doesn't have to abide by the chart of accounts and PBAM, just us. This new legislation requires them to. And so using QuickBooks and using small accounting software, things that they do right now they're going to have to also convert all of their stuff. So it's not just Forest Grove School District. And then there's also financial implications for us. So if the community school doesn't abide, we get our funding held. So it goes beyond just Forest Grove School District. It's quite fast on the changes.
So this whole conversation is illustrative of the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty in budgeting in education in Oregon right now. And the more that we can identify potential impacts to budget and be thoughtful about planning for that, the better prepared we are if they actually come to pass. And then if they come to pass, again, going back to the ending fund balance, that's how we weather some of these things and why we started these conversations advocating for the correction to our structural deficit so that we were no longer spending our one-time monies and ensuring that we maintained an ending fund balance of about 11%.
I am done with my part, and if you wanted to take it over with the next part on the agenda.
Done with your part. All right. Thank you, Director Flood. Thank you so much. But the Budget Committee appreciates the community members sharing information during public comments. Public comments can be made in person, online, or through Zoom by submitting the designated form on the webpage. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes, as is the protocol for board meetings. Budget Committee members will not comment or respond to questions. Public criticism or complaints about school district personnel are not allowed. Are there any questions or comments or requests from the Budget Committee?
Yeah, I lied when I said everybody shut up. We've used the phrase drinking from a fire hose more than once. This is a boatload of information. And this discussion has been going on for ever since I've been on the board, which is all of now maybe close to 10 months. And I get a little discouraged that we're dealing with drive off a cliff here. And there aren't a whole lot of people, and we have one representative from legislative staff that is here this evening. And this is incredibly important across the width and breadth of this great state. And we're not answering the bell. We knew this was coming. What is it? Pogo said we are our own worst enemy at times. It meant the enemy and he is us. not listening to Eileen, we're not listening to Dr. West, we're not listening to Becky Timchuck, we're not listening to Chair at times when these concerns are raised. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how we get our partner in coming to a solution, the state legislature, to come to grips with this. I think the PBAM thing is a classic example of the unfunded mandate. And we knew that. And yet, here we are in the budget process where it's an accomplished fact. And we're asking for a fix in a legislative session that is, what, next February? So I don't want to paint the dark picture because we still have the people around the table here that are answering the call and doing the things they need to do. And there are in all the other school districts across the state, similar people gathered around similar tables, having similar discussions. And we need to coordinate that. And I realize that has nothing to do with adopting a budget for the next fiscal year, but it has everything to do with financial security and stability in the years to come. Now I will shut up. Maybe.
I have a question. Did we ever think about, like other school districts are doing, merging schools together? Is this something we ever think about, or do we ever contemplate of doing things like this to bring down the costs?
I'm gonna answer you a couple different ways.
Okay.
Can I jump in and answer in one way?
Please.
My first regard is, if we start making educational decisions based on economics, we're losing the battle. If we say we're gonna close this school because we can operate the district cheaper, we're shortchanging those kids that will be changing their school enrollment.
I know that.
So to me, again, to use that phrase, that updated phrase, that's a non-starter because that doesn't fit. That doesn't fit what we want to do in part of our strategic plan. At least to me, it doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit to us or to me or to you, but maybe some other people thinking about that process. Maybe change their mind and then say why it's not fitting or why it would not fit in a way, because a lot of districts are doing it. And if someone from the community come and ask this question, what should we answer?
Yeah, right now, our enrollment in schools are not such that we need to consider closure. So we're fortunate in that regard. It is not unheard of. There are districts that have been closing schools. We've read about Portland Public, for example, they're considering now Westland, Wilsonville, Bethel. There are many school districts across the state that have had to close some of their schools over the last few years, but for right now, we're not in a position where we need to do that. To expand your question just a little bit, that doesn't mean that we are not looking at ways that we can maximize resources between school districts. So for example, one of the conversations we're having regionally is whether or not we can figure out how to share CTE programs. And that would provide more opportunities to students to be able to travel between districts to CTE programs that maybe we don't have here. For example, Hillsborough has an aerospace program. We don't. We have a mechatronics and Viking House program. They don't. So we are looking to be able to collaborate in those ways so that students have maximal opportunities, even if the resources don't allow us to offer those programs ourselves. Superintendents can be really creative when we're asked to be, so we'll continue to have those conversations regionally. But at a local level, our enrollment hasn't declined to a point where we need to consider closing schools yet.
Good answer. Yeah.
I would add to this conversation that there's been a couple similar conversations. Kate Lever, who is the Ways and Means, head of Ways and Means, and I believe Rev Sanchez had the town hall you might have seen it, in the Oregonian down at Lincoln High School last week. It was actually the night we had one of our meetings. And there was based on some of the articles that I was sent, and a former student of mine who spoke at that sent me a recap. And one of the things that Senator Lieber did mention, a willingness that the legislator, I think, is starting to understand what we mean when we say unfunded mandates. And some of that is work done by our superintendents and OASBO and CFOs to be able to show the impact. I think that is some of the role that we play now, is really making sure they are understanding what the unfunded mandate is and how it's impacting. That's one thing. This morning, Pete and I attended the West Side Economic Alliance meeting, and the guest speakers were Senator Wagner and Sue Reiki Smith, who's a former superintendent, but now a rep representative. And the question I asked at the end was, what are the barriers preventing our legislature from funding schools and providing a vision? And Rep. Reiki Smith did mention that within the Democratic caucus, she said there is a small group in this caucus that has been wanting to come up with pragmatic solutions to education. And she said that will require support from leadership as well. It sounds like there is quite a discussion happening, my understanding, among the Democratic caucus about what to do about schools. And I'm getting the impression that they're not all aligned on what that looks like. But I think they're starting to realize that the other thing they say, or we have heard legislators say, why should we give schools more money until they can show us how they're using the money well? I think we've all been able to show plenty of examples of how we use our money, but it's examples that Dr. West just mentioned about sharing with our legislators the way we work together as districts, the way we share programs with CTE, the way we're building out literacy programs. It's kind of a both and, as we say, to be able to make sure that they do have a full understanding of how our districts operate and how we are operating effectively, and how we're moving to streamline that and align our practice across school districts. So I think multiple conversations this week, because those are the leaders, Senator Lieber and Rob Wagner, those are the ones pulling the lever right now. So we can share all the PBAM letters we want, we can go to the Board of Ed, but there are people in positions now, Senator Solomon, who can say yes or no on these things. And some of these unfunded mandates, there was plenty of yeses and they should have been no's.
Just like this one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Agreed.
What other questions may we answer for you?
Any other questions, please? Any comments from anyone?
This book, that was my question. Is it just for budget committee? How much of this is available?
It's a PDF. It'll be available online tonight or tomorrow. Tonight. Under board and then budget. Website.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you for an excellent message on the budget.
Go ahead, please.
Sorry, I guess my question, I'm not quite sure how to phrase it, but it has to do with more of kind of what our next steps would be regarding kind of federal funding and grants we receive that support the migrant program that we have. What is that going to look like for our district? Kind of what the thoughts are regarding that, because I know like can't necessarily predict, but we do know it might happen, and it probably will, what it's going to look like.
Tough question. We are set for next year, so we're not going to make any other changes than we already have at this point. The threat that is being made at the federal level is that there will be no funding for migrant services, migrant education, depending on who you listen to. That is the same threat that was made for this year about all federal grants, and they were all funded. They were either flat funded or we saw slight reductions, but they were all funded. So your question is a tough one because none of us have a crystal ball. I really want to believe that calmer heads will prevail when it comes to actually creating an education budget at the federal level like we saw this year. In terms of what could happen if there were no funding, we're faced with a couple of challenges at that point. One, there could be no funding, but also no change in federal law. If those two things are true, we're left in a position where we still have federal legal obligations under Title I-C, which include things like having a migrant recruiter to go out and certify families to qualify for migrant services. So that is a legal requirement. If we receive Title I-C monies, and if there are no monies, we would still probably have to meet that legal requirement. So that is one challenge we may have to navigate. The other challenge we have to navigate is what, if any, migrant services do we continue to provide without funding above and beyond what the legal requirements are. So we have to answer that question for ourselves as a school district, and right now I can't project what that would be. The third question that we would have to wrestle with is Forest Grove School District, because of the number of students and families that we serve through migrant education, we run our own program. And there are not too many school districts in the state that actually run their own migrant program. Most of that is done through a consortium. So we may have to wrestle with the question of whether or not we join our regional consortium at that point, if there is no funding available to us to run our own program. But that raises additional questions. What is the consortium going to do if there's no funding? So one question leads to another, all to say I can't predict, but I can tell you that last year at this time, when we were facing the possibility of no funding, we started to ask those questions and started to scenario plan. Those scenarios still sit on a shelf and hopefully will stay there. But if we are facing that reality, we'll pull them down, dust them off, and then take a look at what are our options given what we know about funding. How is that for a non-answer?
I had a hard time posing the question because I'm like, it's a lot of what if, so
Yeah.
it's a good answer to my what if. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think the answer is depends.
That's what they say in hospital.
I think a big outcry is going to come when if SNAP and Medicaid would be cut down. With the in comparison to the school funding for the children's lunches and breaks. Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, not on it's moved back to you.
So at this point tonight, we have a couple of different options. Of course, the first one is to approve the budget as is. The second one is to amend appropriations by major fund and function. And the last one is to adjourn tonight to be able to allow more time to be able to digest all this information, look at the budget book, and consider ask any additional questions. So
Okay.
kick it off to you.
Well, so our first motion is to approve the budget as is. I'm gonna have a roll call and see if this is going to happen or not. Jennifer?
You've not made the motion.
Oh, that's right. We haven't made the motion yet. Let's make the motion. You like to do it? Would you like to do that?
No, I would not.
Okay.
I move to approve the budget as is presented by our director and superintendent.
I'll second.
Being moved and being seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Discussion.
Oh, discussion, sorry. Here we go. Let's discuss it. Go ahead.
I would actually, I'm getting, as much as I do approve almost all budgetary discussions that we've had and after thorough explanation, I definitely need time to look through the book. So I will be low on this, although I appreciate the confidence in Eileen. I would rather, I think it's important to have time to look through and give people time to, or at least me, time to clarify and ask questions, and then time for the community also to see what's posted.
I'm in agreement with Chair Cocky. I think I'd also like some time to. Adjust it.
I personally like to look at the book too, like we used to look at the book and just to see, make sure that everything is specific there in the book.
Well, I think the other point Ms. Kotke raises is that it gives the public a chance. If this was the first time that the document became public, and we vote to approve the budget tonight, that gives the public approximately an hour and 40 minutes of deep dive into this budget. And if you take a deep dive after an hour and 40 minutes, you're gonna strike your head on the shallow end. So I would say, even if we were to first order of business at our next meeting was to move for approval of the budget as is, at least the public has had a chance to weigh it. And in the spirit of transparency, I don't think there's an obvious. Sorry, Ms. Francis.
Oh, that's fine. The question I have, do you see this changing between now and next Thursday? Your presentation of the budget?
The proposed document will not change between now and Thursday. The only change that would be made is if you guys vote to have a change made.
Just the understanding of.
Yeah, and I'm fine with waiting another week. I just didn't think anything was gonna change. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think there would be any changes either, but it's just the understanding,
Sure,
they would
this-
see, to read it, and then, like, we've been reading it for many years, and then just like the perception of the community, like just that. He just said that the community would ask question, we just improved it after one session, then why did we do?
Could I do a friendly amendment to
I believe.
motion to adjourn? Oh, Jennifer, sorry.
Can
Yeah,
I withdraw my,
in the spirit of what's already been said, I also would have to vote no on the current move or proposal, because I think it's really important that we take some time to carefully digest and consider the information that we've been given this night. And were we to approve it after an hour and 37 minutes of presentation and some minor discussion, it would suggest that our function is basically to listen and say yes. And hopefully that's not what we all signed up to do. I don't have any objections right now to what's been presented, but I'd sure like to take some time to ponder and contemplate and dig a little deeper.
Before we make a modified amendment to adjourn, I do want to capture, was there an official withdrawal of, so that it doesn't appear that we're voting no on the budget?
I make a motion to withdraw my motion.
There's a second withdrawal.
Oh, okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, well, that's first motion, what, we're not going to vote on it, right? That's it. We'll go to the second motion.
So I will move to adjourn. Who's up there? I will move to adjourn and give us time to look over the budget and revisit at the next budget meeting.
Second.
Any discussions? Just had a discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, motion carried. We're done. I gotta get home. Here we go. Done. Meeting's done at 7:39. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Nice meeting, figure it out. Yeah. You will figure it out next time.